It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That, of course, is Alan Saunders, and it is a Friday of a game week, which means Steelers DB Derrick Bell joining the show. Pal, I hope this is not the last one of these that we get to do this season, but DB, how we feeling?
Yeah, facts. What you said, man. Feeling good. I am in the midst of like Snowmageddon. We have over a foot of snow this week in Louisville, Kentucky. I don't know that. I mean, actually, I do know. I've never seen this before in my life, and it has been quite the experience. So this has been pretty wild. I think we're going to get a pretty, at least entertaining game, hopefully tomorrow night. But I'm ready for this snow to go away. I'm going to be honest with y'all. So that's my only thought.
What's the most that you had seen? Like,
I don't know. Nothing like this. I mean, we literally got, I think it was like around Sunday, Monday or whatever. Like we got like 9 to 11 inches or something like that, depending on where you were. I mean, I had never seen that in my life. And then it's actually snowing right now. Like we're getting a couple more inches. So like I've just never seen anything like this. I don't know. It's made me reconsider. Like I've always said that, like, you know, when I'm retired and stuff, I would like to move up to Pittsburgh and move up north. And if y'all get snow like this, I'm chilling where I'm at. I don't think I can do this.
We haven't had that much snow. I can't remember the last time we had a foot in like one storm. It's been a while.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
I would just say someone that is used to seeing some snow, maybe not, a foot in recent memory. Alan, how are you feeling?
I'm good. I'm a little jealous of DB's snowfall. I enjoy the 1 foot at a time. We've just gotten like an inch every day for 5 days. I think it feels like just keeps snowing. Today it was snowing when the sun was shining, which I had never really seen happen before.
Well, I actually thought about when DB was talking about that. And I don't know why. Like when I was transitioned from him talking to asking you how you were doing, I thought about the meme that Derek and I were having fun with when you were in Cleveland for the Browns game, where I put like the Weather Channel logo over you.
Well, let's okay, let's go there, because a lot of people talked about the idea that this game is going to be impacted by the weather, but it doesn't really look like it is, right? I mean, the storm that was predicted to be coming through is actually coming through tonight. There might be snow on the roads in Baltimore tomorrow morning, but it doesn't seem like during the game 30 degrees and 30 degrees and cloudy. Like it's not going to be anything crazy where it's going to, this is just, I think the conditions will be fine for this game.
That always seems to be like what the fans want to have happen, to be like the great equalizer, right? Like, in a game where the Steelers are very heavy underdogs, people are like, oh, if we get the snow, like kind of like last year when they were going to Buffalo, where people are like, oh, that'll be the great equalizer for this game between the Steelers and Bills. And I think that's why a lot of the fans were like, yes, let's have that snowstorm happen during the game, because it will hopefully drag Baltimore down and equalize this game. But you look at the way Baltimore's built, I think that they are more than well equipped to also play within those conditions. Derek, there's a couple things that we talked about yesterday that I'd actually like to get your thoughts on before we dive into the typical matchup stuff and get into our predictions. No Zay Flowers for this one. How important is that for the Ravens passing attack? Obviously, he's their best receiver, first wide receiver in franchise history to make the Pro Bowl. We always talk about how their passing attack, kind of funnels through those tight ends and goes out from there. But how important is No Zay Flowers for that team?
I think it's pretty important, man. You look at just the way that the Steelers typically play Lamar Jackson, just from a schematic standpoint, a lot of man coverage, probably going to bring a decent amount of pressure too. I mean, they blitzed him on over 40% of his dropbacks the first matchup. I think that was cranked all the way up to like 60-something% in the second matchup, which is just an utterly absurd figure. So you're going to play a lot of single high, a lot of man coverage on the outside. I think, not having to worry about Zay, who had a really good game in that second matchup, is, it's pretty notable, especially because, some of the things that they did during the season, like trading for Deontay Johnson, like that was the injury insurance just in case Flowers got hurt. Rashad Bateman's been a guy that's been banged up a lot over the course of his career. He's had a really good season as well, but it just takes away, I feel like, a little bit of maybe venom from the Ravens passing attack. But I just think it signals to probably Baltimore trying to attack in very similar ways that they did in that Week 16 game. You're going to see even more 2 tight ends. Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews have some like wide receiver type qualities. I mean, Likely's not a terrible blocker, but he is more of a receiver than anything else. So they have, pivots to where they can turn to. But I mean, I do think it works out in the Steelers' advantage just because some of the things that Zay can do with his speed can definitely give you issues, especially like over the middle of the field.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this, and I did a whole episode about no Zay Flowers, but I think the idea that the Steelers can play more man-to-man in this game than they maybe have all season should be really attractive to them, and it's unique because most teams don't want to play man-to-man against Lamar Jackson because they want their secondary guys facing the line of scrimmage in case he takes off, but I think the Steelers kind of have the personnel to do it. I think it's maybe the first time all year where I feel like, hey, the personnel lines up good. Like when they've dealt with mobile quarterbacks very well all year. I think they can do that again. I'm pretty optimistic about the Steelers defense against the Ravens offense in this one. It's the other side of the ball that's concerning.
Okay, well, we'll dive in more into that idea in a little bit here. But one thing that actually just popped in my mind, somebody asked us about this yesterday. We didn't have the time to get to it. We'll get both your guys' thoughts on this. Somebody DM me was like, what do you think the rotation will be like with the linebackers for this one? How do you expect them to kind of deploy them? What is your thought on that? Like in terms of, obviously we'll see a ton of Patrick Queen, but more of like more Peyton Wilson, more Landon Roberts, maybe. Like, what is your thought in terms of the way that those snaps will be divvied up?
Oh, man, it's tough to say because, I think you got to look at the way that Baltimore was able to move the ball in that second matchup, and they're probably going to have to come up with some adjustments. I do think that they'll probably tone down the blitzing just a little bit because that used to be like the way that you get after Lamar, right? It's like you want to try to get heat on him. Like they had some offensive architecture stuff that wasn't necessarily conducive to beating the blitz. Lamar himself, sometimes would hold on to the ball a little bit too long and not figure that stuff out pre-snap. Those issues have really been gone away. Like he's been fantastic really against pretty much everything this season, but especially against the blitz. So, it really just depends. Like if they do get into more like 2 tight end stuff and they're trying to really pound the rock, especially without no Zay Flowers, I think you'll probably see more Landon Roberts. But it's going to be interesting to kind of see what it is. To me, it's less about it. Kind of just goes back to a lot of the things I said like during this kind of losing streak because the Steelers defense has done a lot of beating themselves. I feel like that Baltimore game was kind of another example of that. They just got to figure out how to deal with a lot of this like motion stuff. Like a lot of the split flow and the motion stuff really gave them a lot of issues in that second matchup. And just being more on the same page in the second and third levels is going to be like really my priority number one. Because like Alan said, it's not like the Steelers are just like so depleted from a talent perspective. They're fully healthy in this game. Like they've got all their starters. So they should have enough firepower to at least make this thing competitive. It's just a matter of like they can't have the 2 to 3 mental mistakes that they had last game, whether it's shooting the wrong gap or guys getting confused by motion or not passing off a stack or a bunch in the red zone. Those mistakes, like you just can't afford to make them because that's how 34 points happens. And the Steelers are not equipped to win a 34-point game.
Right. Yeah. Alan, DB actually expanded upon that quite a bit, but going back to the original thing in terms of the way that you think the linebacker snaps will be divvied up, what's your thought?
Well, if 42's in the game, Patrick Ricard, then Landon Roberts is going to be in the game. You can be sure about that. I think the question mark comes, how do you attack the Ravens when they go 12 personnel, but it's Likely and Andrews? Like, because like DB's saying, like, yeah, they're tight ends, but like they're tough matchups to cover and they're not like great blockers. Like how seriously do you take 12 personnel when it's those guys? And how do you respond? Do you play nickel against 12 with Likely and Andrews out there? Do you stay in base and means that, okay, you can give one of them to Sean Elliott, but that means that Patrick Queen or Peyton Wilson has to cover the other. I think that's an interesting question. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but I think to me, if you're talking about the Steelers' priority, you have to stop Derrick Henry first. If you don't stop Derrick Henry, you can't win. If you stop Derrick Henry and Lamar still beats you, well, hey, he's Lamar Jackson. Like, I think they've got to stop Derrick Henry first and foremost. So for me, I think this is an Landon Roberts game, at least at the beginning. And then maybe you can get a lead. Maybe you can get them into unfavorable down and distance situations. You can go in and try to plaster the wall with coverage guys to deal with the tight ends and Justice Hill and all that. But I think you got to stop Derrick Henry first.
Yeah, absolutely. Sticking on this side, I'll wait and ask the other question to Derek when we get to the offensive side as it pertains to the Steelers offense. But Alan, you said within there, and we can kind of dive into this now, that you feel pretty good about the Steelers defense matching up with the Ravens offense. What makes you feel that way? What do you think that they want to do?
Well, I just think the Steelers have a good game plan against Lamar Jackson. They've shown that good game plan over and over again. I mean, I understand that Lamar hasn't been a part of the entirety of this sort of 10-game stretch where the Steelers have shown, that they have something going on against the Ravens. But it's not a mistake. It's not a secret that, it's not been great against the Pittsburgh Steelers for Lamar Jackson. It just hasn't. And I think that they have a good game plan for going against him. In 8 games, he's got a 73.1 passer rating. That's bad. That's very bad. And rushing at 5 yards per carry, which any other human being on the planet would be great, for Lamar Jackson is actually one of his worst figures. And so I just think they've got the scheme. They're healthy this time around. And I don't expect them to allow Derrick Henry to go off the way he did again. They're usually very good against the run. I think they'll be able to make those adjustments and get that cleaned up.
DB?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see a really similar game plan to what I was talking about. I think they're going to play a lot of man. I think they're going to try to blitz, and they're just going to live with the results. And, kind of just to touch on a couple of things that we were talking about with the multi-tight end sets and the Zay Flowers stuff. So, you look at, how the target distribution has been in these 2 matchups so far this season. Zay has 7 targets. He's got 4 catches, 93 yards. When the Steelers have been in man coverage, the 7 targets tied for the team high, 93 yards is the team high. Interesting enough is Rashad Bateman doesn't have a catch against man coverage when the Steelers and the Ravens have played this season. And it really does. I don't know that it actually matters, to be honest with you. I would probably lean towards what Alan said, just trying to go big on big and try to see if you can try to stop the run, try to get them into some long down and distance stuff. And you can let your pass rushers really tee off. I don't know that going nickel is really advantageous to them because it's who are you bringing off the bench? And it's Beanie Bishop or Cam Sutton. Neither one of those guys are going to cover Isaiah Likely anyway. The Steelers don't really have.
Trice?
Yeah, I mean, they don't really have. They don't really have a DB type that I think really runs with him extremely well. Even Elliott, I think over the second half of the year when they've had to make him cover a little bit more in man coverage. Deshaun's been great, excellent signing, and he's had a fantastic season. I just don't think he's a very good that's not his game. It's man coverage. It's just not really his game either. So I would kind of lean towards what Alan was saying, just prioritize stopping the run and try to make them one dimensional. And that's kind of what they were unable to do in that second matchup. They didn't have anything working. Lamar was really on a little bit of a heater. He made a lot of pretty special throws, that out route that he hit to Likely. I think it was on a 3rd down where Bishop allowed him to kind of cross his face towards the sideline. I mean, that was a perfect throw. And then Henry ripped off a bunch of explosive runs. But I just think that the Steelers have to be more sound. And it's more about what they do more than what Baltimore does. They just can't make so many self-imposed errors is what I want to say.
I'm not making excuses at all when I say this, but I'm just wondering from the first game to the second game, we saw a lot of different personnel in the defense have to play because they didn't have Deshaun Elliott, Larry Ogunjobi, Dante Jackson, then they lost Joey Porter Jr. in that game. Obviously, from a run defense perspective, I immediately think of the impact that Larry Ogunjobi and Deshaun Elliott would have had in that game. How much of a difference do you expect to see because of just those guys simply coming back?
Well, Deshaun Elliott's been so good against the run this year. I mean, I just think the ability to have a defensive back who, maybe is not the world's greatest man cover DB, fine, whatever, but just you're putting a defensive back body out there that is that good against the run. I think that's such a huge advantage for the Steelers. I really think that not having him probably hurt more than anything else that happened against the Ravens. I mean, Joey being out hurt, but like you said, Bateman didn't kill him anyway, right? Didn't have Dante, and Flowers had a good game, but it's not like he was the sole reason they lost. They lost the game because they couldn't get their own stuff figured out. And so, like, yeah, but I think against the run, and like DB was saying, like, the inability to put Baltimore in uncomfortable positions, to me, is what you can live with some mistakes if you're also making the other team make mistakes. Like, if you leave a couple guys uncovered, you can go oops if you have 2 interceptions, or you got Lamar running for his life or fumbling the ball. Like, they didn't do anything to get Baltimore uncomfortable, and I think not being able to stop the run was the root of that.
Yeah. DB, anything to add in terms of getting those guys? Well, I say back. I mean, they played obviously in the last game and stuff like that, but they weren't in that second Ravens game.
Yeah, I mean, I think having Deshaun's huge, just because of we already talked about like just the formations and the personnel that each team's going to really roll out. I mean, the Steelers are going to stack the box. I mean, they're going to play single high. They do it pretty much more than like any other team. We know they're going to probably play a lot of man coverage. So I think having him in the box, just because like Elliott's a guy who will trigger quick against the run. He's been an extremely good tackler. And that's kind of like the thing too, is like with Henry, I think guys like that who are quick to fill from depth, and can kind of shoot gaps and meet him at the line of scrimmage is always kind of, I don't want to say the way to stop him, but you can slow him down. Because like if he's a guy who gets 3 to 4 yards past the line of scrimmage without you touching him, that just allows him to build up speed, and that's where the explosive plays happen. And I think that's the one thing too, is with the Steelers, like I don't want to say it's like the end of the world, but like you're probably not going to be able to stop Lamar and stop Derrick Henry, like stop the pass and the run. Like this offense is one of the best offensive, if not the best in the NFL for a reason. But you got to try to take one of them away, or at least make both of them kind of slowly matriculate down the field. And like that was the problem in the last game. I think they gave up like 3 or 4 explosive runs. I mean, you're not gonna be able to get by like that. So, and some of those, like I said, were like self-inflicted wounds of like guys shoot the wrong gap when they're not supposed to, poor tackling, things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna be difficult even without Zay Flowers. But I do think it's doable to slow them down.
I would be remiss if before we switch sides, we didn't acknowledge first team All-Pro Cam Heyward at 35 years old. I mean, what a monster season for the big man. And I actually think it raises a different question. Alan, we talked about, like, we were having a conversation on here before this season about Cam's Hall of Fame case. Like, I understand that a lot of people think you got to win a Super Bowl in order to get that acknowledgement. But does this season at all change anything about his Hall of Fame case to you?
I mean, yeah, I think so. Let me just, like, I'm not saying that like one more All-Pro was like the thing that he needed. Yeah. And I wasn't necessarily expecting this to happen, but like, let's acknowledge that there was a chance that like Cam was never going to get back to this level, that he was going to be the player that we saw at the end of last year. And that was it. That's all he was ever going to do again. I never thought that, but like, he's 35 years old. Like, that's not a totally unsuggestible thing. If that had happened, if you had just seen like the end of him being, an elite player, I think his Hall of Fame credentials would be left pretty wanting. Now, did he need one this year? I know, like, if he had the season he had, but for whatever reason was not voted an All-Pro, I wouldn't be like saying like, oh, his Hall of Fame case is doomed, because I think he's still got more football ahead of him, and that's probably it's probably okay. It was just the thing he needed was to look like the player he had been before the injury, and man, he really did. Like 8 sacks, 12 TFLs.
Well, like, that's the thing. It's like, even if you expected him to bounce back to a degree from what we saw last year, like to this level, though, like, I mean, that's the thing is, like, to me, as somebody that thought that he would bounce back and at least be able to be the same player, he exceeded what I expected from him. And I think that that's the case for a lot of people. What say you, DB?
Yeah, Sam, I mean, this type of season is just absolutely unheard of. I mean, that was one of the reasons why I was kind of campaigning for him to get, some Defensive Player of the Year love, even though, I think it probably is rightfully going to go to, I think, Pastor 10 in Denver. I think kind of like what you guys were saying, I think we knew that there was going to be some positive regression, if you will, from like a pass rushing standpoint. With him coming back healthy, I just had no idea that like he was still going to be capable of something like this. I mean, I firmly believe, I think he was the Steelers' best player all season long. Certainly their most consistent on a week in, week out basis. For me, this does kind of cement his like Hall of Fame candidacy. I just think that, he'll end up getting it. He's got the accolades from a personal level. I think and Cam is already pretty much like a Steelers legend through and through. I think TJ brought up a good point though, just like with the older guys, they do understand it because they see the alumni teams and stuff come back on those weekends, and they just understand with the history in that building that there is like a little bit something different to those guys that have like the postseason success. And it doesn't necessarily have to be consistent success either, but guys who make big plays in the postseason typically do get remembered for such plays. And like that would be the only thing that I personally have said for however long that like I think is missing from like Cam and even some of these other guys kind of quote unquote legacies. It's like we just don't have that like signature like playoff type moment, and it's hard to get those because you just don't get the chance to play a lot of playoff games, especially when you're not winning games in the postseason, which they haven't done a lot of recently. But like just looking at like Cam's numbers, I mean he's basically played 8 playoff games. He's got 1 sack, 2 TFLs in those games. So like for me personally, that would be like something to where even if they don't win the game on Saturday, it would kind of be cool for him to like, since he's already playing at such a high level, to kind of go out there, have a really impactful performance just for us to kind of, I think, I don't want to say fully appreciate this season, but just kind of tie a bow on like what I think is a pretty special performance from somebody at his age.
Yeah, I think that, I put a stamp on it, but same wording.
I think that playoff conversation applies to TJ Watt too.
Yep.
Has not played well in his 3 playoff games. Some of that was situational. 2 of them got down early and kind of minimized the pass rush. But like, yeah, if you're a big time player, you should play best in the playoffs. And I think the fact that some of the Steelers big time players have not is the biggest reason why they have the losing streak they have. Ben Roethlisberger wasn't very good in his last few playoff games. Marquise Pouncey, who I think is a borderline Hall of Famer, biffs the snap against Cleveland. Like, if those things don't happen, the Steelers probably don't have the playoff track record they have. And so, I think some playoff success would go along. Like right now, like Cam's Hall of Fame monitor score is like pretty good. Like it's ahead of guys that have gotten in for sure. But it's below some people that haven't also, and some guys that haven't yet come up, like Ndamukong Suh and Fletcher Cox. I don't know where you put him in comparison to those guys, but like win a Super Bowl and it's a slam. Like there's nothing there's no other holes to poke in the resume if you do that. Not saying that's going to happen this year, but I feel like that's kind of the one thing where you want to look at his candidacy and say like, hey, the playoff success hasn't really been there. That would end all conversation.
This is going to be extremely random, but I always bring this up when we talk about like playoff stuff and guys that I remember. And obviously this player that I'm talking about isn't quite on the caliber of like a Cam or a TJ who have like all these like personal accolades and things like that. Lamar Woodley is a guy who like was a very good Pittsburgh Steeler and had like a really good like pro career. Like he's someone that I always bring up in terms of like that I will always appreciate a ton just because of like how many big moments he had in the playoffs. Like you look at Lamar's stats, he played in, I think it was 8 postseason games. He had 11 sacks. There was 4 straight postseason games where he had multiple sacks. So Jacksonville, 2 sacks. And then when they went on that, the Super Bowl run, he had 2 sacks, a total of 12 tackles for loss, 17 quarterbacks hits in those games. So, I mean, like, obviously that's like absurd. That's probably one of the better like postseason runs that like no one knows about, or maybe that we've ever seen in like Steelers history. But like, I want these guys to experience postseason success for them, for all like the hard work, and also just because like how special players they are. But also like I want to have like those types of memories for like themselves and the fan base to kind of remember them by. Just because I always say that like Steelers Ravens games, like that's where you kind of like leave your mark like as a player. Like those types of games, I would love eternally ingrained in your mind.
Like his career splits against the Ravens have to be incredible. Every time I think about a Lamar Woodley play, I think it was against Baltimore.
Yeah. So I want that for them, so bad. Even more so. I mean, I wouldn't say like even more so than like a postseason win, because I'm sure they would trade, a win for the individual accolades. It's just those type of moments are kind of missing from some of these guys' resumes. And it's just going to be a shame to me if like, not only if they waste this type of season from Cam and they're not competitive tomorrow night, but if like we get to the end of Cam's career and like we don't have like that signature playoff moment, to kind of remember him by. I think that will always kind of like sting a little bit, even if, you know, like I said, I do think he's in a perfect spot to get a gold jacket, rightfully so.
You mentioned Lamar Woodley. Let's see another 56 create some havoc.
There you
of his
go.
own tomorrow.
Yeah.
The Ravens.
He does pretty well against Baltimore too.
Yep, absolutely. DB, we'll start with you for this because I want to get your thoughts on something that we talked about yesterday. I said I had something for the offense too. I would say it's looking just based off like the roster moves that they made, the way that they brought Calvin Anderson back. I'm expecting Spencer Anderson to start over Mason McCormick tomorrow night, and I want to get your thoughts on that, what that would mean for this offensive line. Obviously they had some injuries early in the season, but they've been able to have the same group as of late, that same starting five for quite a while now. So they've had that continuity. Looks like there might be a shakeup there due to Mason McCormick breaking his hand. What are your thoughts on going from Mason McCormick to Spencer Anderson?
Not great thoughts, to be honest. I think it's been really funny because I think I've been a little bit lower maybe on McCormick than I think a lot of people have been. I just think that there have been a lot more struggles there than I think a lot of people are willing to acknowledge. But it's really expected. Like we and you were talking about this earlier, Smitty, you made a good point. Like it's the 4th round rookie. We weren't expecting to see him this year at all. And just with the James Daniels injury, he's been kind of forced into the lineup. And I just think over the course of the season, you've kind of seen some cracks in his game, like just some things that, you know, I think he needs to improve upon, and then maybe some other stuff that like he may not be able to. So, but having said that, like I don't know how you watch the first, you know, however many games that Spencer started early in the season, and then watch McCormick and think that like they're comparable players, in my opinion. But the big thing is like I'm just going to touch on what I said about the defense earlier. One of the offense's issues over the first like month of the season is like, and I guess it's still true, but they're just having so many like busts on the offensive line as far as like they don't know who they're going to, like who's pulling, who's not. A lot of that was happening when Spencer Anderson was in the game early in the year. So I think biggest thing for me is like can't have those just this offense just isn't talented enough, just straight up, to have those type of mistakes, whether it's penalties or missed assignments in the run blocking game. They need to be able to run the ball at least like a little bit in this one, because we know they're going to at least try to. But yeah, I don't feel great about it, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I can't imagine that like McCormick's going to be able to be like super effective with a broken hand. And he said he's not playing with a cast, right? Like he doesn't want to play with a cast. And I don't know how I think that would be incredibly difficult. I don't know. I've broken my hand once, but I didn't play offensive line. So I don't, I can't imagine doing that.
Yeah, we've obviously had that conversation a bit, Alan, yesterday, but I don't know if you have anything else to add to conversation.
I think, well, if he plays with a broken hand, he's not holding, right? So I mean, you got that going for you. You can't get called for holding with a cast. That's not going to be it. I mean, did they end up activating Calvin Anderson? I didn't see a move today. So I don't know.
I guess I was just going based on. Okay, maybe you're right.
Yeah, because he like, or did they, because it's Sunday? Can they do it? Or because the game is Saturday, can they do it tomorrow? Do they run transactions on Saturday? They may be able to do it tomorrow because the Saturday.
Yeah,
game.
I don't know. The last thing that I actually do see, you're right, is like people just assuming, presumably makes the room to activate him, but it never happened. So
I mean, they don't have a backup tackle if Spencer Anderson is playing. So like, I would assume that that's going to happen. And I think Calvin Anderson is mostly healthy. They cut Scotty Miller for a reason. Like I don't see any reason to not do that. So yeah, I mean I think Mason McCormick has been better than I expect out of a 4th round rookie. I also don't think he's been like so good that the Steelers should just be like I think some people are like, oh, he's the starter forever. Like we didn't expect him to be good. Like he play like. You know, he's been fine. He's been better than a 4th round rookie ought to be. I feel like it's the like Kevin Dotson syndrome all over again, where it's like the expectations for a 4th round rookie are very different than someone you want to make your starting guard forever. Like you have to, you have to kind of, you have to establish consistency and do it for a long time before the second thing happens. I think I've been very impressed with just his demeanor, his poise. Like nothing's been too big for him. A guy coming from the SCS level, I feel like that's, you saw the physical tools. You wonder about that other stuff, and the guy is just rock solid. So I think that's been impressive. Spencer Anderson's from Maryland. He'll be highly motivated.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
that's true.
Yeah, I've seen some people throw in McCormick on like their all rookie teams for the starting guard, and I'm just I can't get on board with that. Like you said, if you didn't now, and I was going to give appreciation for the temperament that he plays with. I think he has the right mindset, and I'm cautiously optimistic about what he will be in year 2 and beyond. But I think it's very clear the lumps that he's taken in pass pro. He's not there. The pad
The
level.
only
Mainly.
the thing about the temperament thing is a good thing because
Yeah.
the Steelers' offensive line is still not good, but they do play nasty. And I think that you can really go back to the temperament thing with him and Zach Frazier. Now, Zach Frazier is like a very good player. He was second team All Pro on my All Pro list. Wrote about that. You can go read that at Steelers.
Not the AP All Pro. The DP,
yeah, my list, the one that actually matters.
EFF put him on the All Rookie team. Everybody knows.
Yeah,
says it's gotta be true.
Yeah, 100%. It's gospel. I think the big thing, and we got other stuff we can probably talk about instead of this right now. But my thing with like next year is, I would be interested in continuing to develop Mason McCormick. I probably wouldn't just like hand him a starting gig. The thing that concerns me is like, I don't know the Steelers' path out of like this current build that they're in and like how they're going to move forward. I would just be really, really, I guess, nervous about going into next season and just saying like, Mason McCormick, you have a starting job. Broderick Jones, you have a starting job. And I just feel like you're asking two guys to take a pretty big leap, potentially even right next to each other for an offense that pretty much needs the offensive line to be very good, in my opinion, to take like a big step forward. So that would be the thing for me is like, I don't know. Some of the stuff with McCormick, I think is like easily cleaned up. I do see like some of the same limitations that we kind of saw against better competition in college. Like the dude plays straight up. Like he just plays with poor pad level. And I want to say that like, yeah, you can get that ironed out. I still think that that's possible. It's just, I think we've got to see it happen. Kind of like what Alan said.
Mm-hmm. As a whole for the offense, obviously a team that's been trending in the wrong direction over the last month or so. What is your expectation for this game tomorrow night? Or do you think they're going to be able to right the ship at all? What is your thought process in terms of how they're going to attack them? Where are we at with this offense?
I think the Steelers should feel okay about the passing like matchups. Like I know the Baltimore secondary has been much better lately since they made their changes, but like I think if you're talking about facing the Steelers, like what they've done is they've basically married Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey to the middle of the field, which is where the Steelers don't throw the ball. So like the Steelers are like, oh great, we'll just never throw it there instead of like almost never throwing it there, and we'll attack Tre'Davious White and the rest of the guys on the outside. And like I think the Steelers probably like I think the changes to the Baltimore defense that have made them much better do not necessarily make them as scary to the Steelers as to some other teams, which is a good thing because they've been pretty good. I'm concerned about the pass protection. I think that's the big thing here. If Russ can get time, I think the Steelers can get guys open down the field. But he has been really feeling the rush, maybe even more than it's actually been there lately. And like that's a thing that can spiral out of control pretty rapidly in the course of a game. They've got to find a way to keep him upright, keep clean pockets around him, and get the ball out.
DB.
Man, I have no idea what they're going to do offensively. I tweeted this yesterday. Like, I just don't know what other, like, I don't know what buttons they can push, which is really tough because I keep looking at it. You try to find some like matchups that you like. Baltimore's run defense has been phenomenal pretty much all season long.
They're not going to be able to run the ball.
Yeah, sure. I don't think that they're just going to be able to like hammer these guys over the head. They just don't have the personnel to do it up front. I will say that like they did have some success attacking Malik Harrison, their off-ball linebacker. Like when I go back and watch the film, like he's pretty much like one of the weak spots, if not the weak spot on the defense. You kind of try to put the bullseye on him a little bit with some different things, but again, they don't throw over the middle of the field, so it's kind of hard to like target him. They did get him on a little wheel route to Cordero Patterson in the red zone last time. I believe that was on Harrison too. But yeah, I mean, like Alan said, like on the boundary, Nate Wiggins has played really well, but he's 165 pounds soaking wet. Could you try to get him maybe on a go ball, use Pickens' physicality, body control at the point? On the other side, like Trey White has provided them a little bit of stability. The thing is, like what teams have been doing is like they've just been playing a ton of zone coverage against the Steelers, And just like to pick inside, they've been getting real physical with him, trying to make sure they got like 2-over-1, to where like he's basically like taken out of a lot of these plays and like forcing Russ to kind of go to a second read. And like pretty much once that happens, Russ is pretty much in scramble mode. So it's just really difficult to find answers. I have no idea what they're going to do. I would just say that, kind of like what Alan said, is like if you can try to manufacture some sort of like quick passing game, that would probably help them a little bit. And I know everybody wants to see them throw the ball more on first down because like people were freaking out because they ran the ball every first down last week. And I'm not saying like that predictability wasn't like completely nonsensical on the part of Arthur Smith. I'm not trying to defend him, but like guys, they're terrible when they throw the ball on early downs too. So it's like, what do you?
Bengals were terrible against the run.
Yeah,
and
they don't.
And the Steelers had been running the ball well. Like there was a thought there that was smart. It just didn't work.
Just go look. I mean, like all you have to do is just go look at the numbers, especially like over the last month. Like this isn't a team. They run the ball a lot. They're not very good at it. They're not very good throwing the ball. The only thing that this offense really does at a high level, they don't use play action very well. They're like a solid screen team, but that's hard to rely on, really. The only thing this offense really does at a high level is throw the deep ball. And you just can't live. I mean, I'm saying you can't live over the entire season or a long period of time with that as like the integral part of your offense. Now, could they win a game against Baltimore on Saturday with that by hitting like 5 or 6 explosive plays and they get like the best George Pickens game of the season? Sure. I think that's possible. Do I see them like being able to go on a postseason run with this offense? It's kind of hard to imagine that they would be, I'll just say, lucky enough to put that type of stuff together because like I said, they just don't have like, there's just not a lot of like meat and potatoes to this offense right now.
I know what the game plan is going to be. It actually changed within the last 48 hours. So the Steelers, very inefficient running the football. Baltimore is great at it. That doesn't matter. Mike Tomlin actually went into the room, tore up the game plan, said we're going to run into a wall 50 times on Saturday.
No, Smitty, it's the wishbone.
That's right.
It's a wishbone.
I heard they were running the option with Fields.
Wouldn't it be something?
DB, did you hear about the wishbone thing? Why we brought that up?
No.
Alan said on here something about like you can't reinvent. Like Arthur Smith's not just going to run the wishbone. Like offensive coordinators aren't going to
coach what they coach. They can't like
coach what they coach.
There's a skill to coaching a certain style, a certain way that like you can't just say like, oh, run a different offense. Like it doesn't work. And I said, Arthur Smith, like if you want to run the wishbone, you don't tell Arthur Smith to run the wishbone. You fire Arthur Smith and you hire a coach that runs the wishbone. Sure. And then Arthur Smith came out the next day and was like, well, I mean, we're going to leave. We're going to burn the boats. We're going to leave no stone unturned. I'm not going to run the wishbone or anything. That's exactly what he said.
Art's listening to the pod. Damn. That's nice. I like that.
I mean, I don't know about this specific one because he probably hasn't liked much of what we've been said about the offense, but
I mean, that's something though. If they just came out in this game and like threw 30 deep balls, like because like it's not crazy.
What else are they gonna like?
What else?
Screens. We just said.
Right. What else?
15 screens, 15 deep balls.
Maybe you get like Freiermuth against like Ardarius Washington or against Malik Harrison, and you feel like he can win those. Yeah, I kind of buy that. Screen game with Jaylen Warren. Like otherwise, I don't know what else you look at with the matchup here, and you find a win for the Steelers offense.
It just goes back to what I was saying, man. Like I don't know what this offense like does at a high level. I mean, I would love to say that there's more than that, but like outside, like the 50-50 balls on the outside, and like I think that people maybe think that like, oh, like the defenses have figured out like the Steelers, and like like defenses have started doing some things. I mentioned like the man coverage stuff. I mentioned like just getting a little bit two on one against Pickens, things like that, like making Russ go passes like first reading the progression. I think that's led to some of the sacks and things like that. But I just think that this style of offense, like you look around the league, like it doesn't really work unless like the only like team that I can think of like in terms of like passing attack that plays like this, where it's just deep balls, all outside the number stuff. It's like pick a side, very like simplistic ISO ball stuff is Philly. And like, because they have Jalen Hurts, who's like a pretty good deep ball thrower, but they have like two of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Like AJ Brown's like completely unstoppable. Like you cannot guard him one-on-one. And they get a bunch of single high because they are like the best rushing team in the league. The Steelers are not. So it's like, that's the thing. It's like, I just don't know. I don't know if they have other punches to throw other than just trying to do that. Like the one thing about, like you're saying about Allen is, we said that coming into that first matchup, like, oh, like Baltimore's giving up all these explosive plays. Like they haven't been able to keep a lid on anything. They got all these busted coverages in the back end. Like that's what the Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton stuff, like those changes have done. They just aren't giving up explosives anymore. I think they've given up like 4 or 5 explosive passes down the field in the last like 5-6 weeks since that like week 11 change. So it's like, if they can't do that, like the Steelers are going to have to hit, they're going to have to hit like 4 or 5 explosives in this one through the air. And they're probably going to have to rip off, like whether it's a screen or a run or two or something like that, maybe bring Fields in. And even though you're going to be predictable when you do it, but like maybe you can get a read option play with him to go get 30 yards or something like that. That's their best hope, in my opinion. It's like the defense plays to their full potential in this one, and then the offense gets 5 or 6 explosive plays, and they win the turnover battle, hopefully win the game.
There we go. All right, well, we'll dive into that and see if any of us believe that they are going to do just that. First, bold predictions. I got one that involves the number 3. Actually, it's 2 that both involve the number 3. One of them's not so bold because 3 turnovers for 2 quarterbacks combined. I guess that's not that bold, but combined 3 turnovers for the quarterbacks. The other side of that, also involving the number 3 combined touchdowns for the tight ends in this game, whether it's Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Pat Freiermuth, hell, I don't know, Darnell Washington. The tight ends in some form or fashion are going to combine for 3 receiving touchdowns in this one.
Now, is this like a parlay? Are you trying to hit both of these? Or are you saying, are you just making
they're both? Yes. Nope. They're both. They're both bold predictions. They're separate things, both involving the number 3.
All right. Is Charlie Kolar going to play? He's like one of those guys that I just feel like,
yeah,
like the Steelers just give up like random big plays to guys. You're like, who and from where and like how, and I don't know. That just feels like one of those guys. I have a bold prediction, and I know if you've been watching the game the last few weeks, this may stretch the bounds of credulity. The Steelers are going to recover a fumble. I know that It's been a long time since it happened. I'll go even bolder though, and I'll say Steelers +2 turnover margin in this game.
Oh wow.
Okay. All right, DB.
Yeah.
Prediction.
My bold prediction is something that I am not proud of because of how much time I spent looking into this. So obviously I've been ranting over the past like 10 minutes about how I just don't know what the Steelers are going to do offensively. So what do you need to happen in order to score points or get a spark if you can't do anything offensively? I'm going to say the Steelers get buck wild and run a fake punt. That's my bold prediction in this one, is that they try to get a fake punt. Also, in my research for this, do you all know how many fake punts are ran on a yearly basis? Like, how many would you say?
Man, I really feel like I'm going to undershoot the number.
You're not. You're not going to.
8?
That's basically how many it is. The Steelers have already ran a fake punt this year, by the way. The Ravens have, if you go to YouTube and just look at like fake punt stuff, I think the Ravens are on there the most. Like they've ran the most fake punts. It hasn't been as much recently. However, the Ravens haven't seen a fake punt since 2020. Again, this is part of like what I said. I'm not really proud of the amount of research that I put into this. But the Titans actually got them with a fake punt during the COVID season. What they did was they put their backup quarterback, Logan Woodside, in as like the up back, and then snapped it to him and then rode him out right and then ran a little like hitch route at the sticks for a first down conversion in that game. So I'm not saying that's the way that they're going to do it.
Wouldn't Logan Woodside being on the field as an up back been like an automatic tell?
Yeah,
the Ravens?
That was kind of my thing too, but like that's the thing. I think you just got to empty the clip and pull out all the stops in this one. So like,
is it going to be successful though, or they just run a fake? You're not going further than they do a fake punt.
I'd just say that they're going to run a
Okay.
fake punt. I hadn't really thought
That's
about it,
fair.
whether it's going to be successful. Honestly, my only thing that I will say is please do not throw the ball to James Pierre. Thank you. Try to throw the ball to Ben Skoranek. He is healthy. So,
Yep.
I would probably try to get him on the right side of the field. I also looked at like who usually is the gunner on the left side of the formation. It's usually Nate Wiggins. So Skoranek does have a pretty big size advantage between those two. And it's been Skoranek. Like, you're not going to cover him one-on-one. Like, we know about that. So, but yeah, fake punt. That's my bold prediction.
Love it. Okay. Score-wise, I will say, by the way, I'm on a 3-game losing streak when it comes to predicting games here. Going back to the last one that I correctly predicted was the Eagles beating the Steelers, because I picked the Steelers to beat the Ravens, picked the Steelers to beat the Chiefs, and picked the Steelers to beat the Cincinnati Bengals. So good news, Steelers fans. I'm picking the Baltimore Ravens to win this football game tomorrow. So congratulations on us for advancing to the divisional round of the playoffs, getting the monkey off our back with winning a playoff game. I'm going to say that this is going to be a little bit lower scoring. I do think the defense plays relatively well, and I think that, we won't be having this big old conversation at the end of it like they gave up 35 plus points again in a playoff game. I don't know how this offense is going to get it done. Like, I don't know how they can go bar for bar, band for band, M for M with Lamar Jackson in this Ravens offense, despite not having Zay Flowers. So I'm going 26-18. The Baltimore Ravens win this one.
I'm
Am
going
I up
last.
next?
I'm going last.
Okay. That means he's picking the Steelers. All right. So, all right. Well, Smitty's picking the Ravens. I think here's my thing. I think the Steelers defense found some good things in the regular season finale against the Bengals. I didn't see nearly as many like communication issues. I think they got some of that stuff hopefully sorted out. They are fully healthy in this one. I already mentioned like Zay Flowers not playing, and this one's definitely going to be an advantage for the Steelers. That being said, though, I'm taking the Ravens. I can't, like you said, I just can't imagine a world where they're able to score enough points. I think really the formula is kind of like the things that we talked about, and then like kind of what Alan was saying for his bold prediction. They're going to need to like recover a fumble. They're going to need to win the turnover margin by a significant mark. I think they have turned the Ravens over like this year in both of the matchups. And like Lamar doesn't throw really interceptions. Like you look at his like turnover worthy play rate, it's like exceptional this year. You're going to need to get some type of fluky interception, probably some either off like a miscommunication, force him to a bad decision, a tip ball that goes your way in the secondary. And then you're going to need a strip sack. Like that's the one thing that like, I think as good as Lamar is and like as many improvements as he's made in his game, like over the years, like he's still susceptible to putting the ball on the ground. And I think like the way that you get after that is like a quick win on the outside on the perimeter. And that's probably going to be Alex Highsmith. So like the keys to victory are like you get 2 to 3 turnovers. Maybe you score on defense, you get a fake punt, something like that. But it's such a narrow path to win just because of the firepower that the Ravens have. And I just think their defense is playing a lot better. They've been the best defense in the NFL since the bye week or since week 11. So I'm going to take the Ravens 27-16.
Yeah, you're right. I'm going to pick the Steelers. I don't think that the Steelers are a better team than the Baltimore Ravens. I do think the Steelers have the Ravens number for reasons beyond like Mike Tomlin devil magic. I think they have a good game plan against Lamar Jackson. I think they've been able to frustrate him. I think they've been able to make him turn the ball over. I know that Lamar has struggled in the playoffs. I'm not going to say that like I don't think I don't attribute like playoff success or failure to any like I don't think it's because he can't handle the moment or what. Like I think all that's nonsense. But I do think that when you're in a situation where you've struggled repeatedly and you start to struggle, things can get out of hand. Like and to me, that's why this is a game that I think the Steelers can win. I think it's a game I think the Steelers will win. And I will say the Steelers are going to win 22-20, and Justin Tucker misses a potential game-winning field goal.
God, I would love that. Oh my gosh. There's no one who would be more excited about that than I would be. God bless.
Listen, I already take blood pressure medication. All I'm saying is, if this plays out the way that Alan is talking about, probably up in that, maybe add a third pill per day, or increasing, the milligrams on that. I don't like. I like the result. I don't like how we're getting there and what it means for my health. But I appreciate the direction that you're going with the game, regardless. And the people got what they wanted on this episode, by the way, because we're 50 minutes, almost an hour. People have been saying, "Where's the hour episode?" Well, you got one this week. We always do a little bit longer with DB, but this one certainly. Any closing thoughts about this game, DB? It almost sounded like you wanted to say something. I don't know if you were just sighing or what that was.
I'm trying to navigate a way here, trying to find a way to make Alan's prediction to come true, and for me and you to look like idiots. The other thing is that we've talked about this so much over the course of the season. It sounds like a broken record, but the Steelers have to get off to some semblance of a start, because if you do want to kind of form a narrative and say okay, this Ravens team, all the pressure's on them, right? They're 9.5, 10-point favorites. Nobody thinks that the Steelers are going to have any shot to win this game, even us to some degree. If you want to form a narrative, it's what happens if the Steelers jump out to a 10-3 lead or a 10-0 lead or something like that? Then, because I think it just goes beyond similar to what Alan was saying. It's there is history, obviously, between these two teams. There is a narrative which everyone on both sides of the field is aware of, that the Steelers have kind of been this sort of boogeyman for Lamar in a way, but also the Ravens have underperformed in the playoffs. So I just think it's one of those things to where if you could get out to a little bit of an early lead, maybe there is some pressing that goes on the other sideline to where it's oh no, this can't be happening again. You know what I'm saying? Oh, we're going to fall short, because that's the thing about the Ravens. You got an MVP quarterback in his prime. You haven't broke through in the playoffs. They got to do it now. There's a lot of pressure on them, to whereas I feel on the Steelers side, yeah, they haven't won a playoff game in a long time, but I don't like I said, I don't think if you actually rank the teams in the playoffs by overall talent or who you think is better, nobody actually thinks that the Steelers are going to make a run. So you can go out there and play pretty free. All the pressure's on the other side. And I just think, it'd be great to say that, get up 10-0 or something like that if the Steelers weren't 29th in first quarter scoring this year. But, it only takes one game. That's the good thing about single elimination tournaments, man. It's only one game. So,
and that's the path to turning them into more of a one-dimensional football team. Not saying that they would completely go away from Derrick Henry if you get a double-digit lead early, but that's the path towards going that direction. Last thing that I want to mention, I reached out. I was already having a conversation with him to Pittsburgh Steelers tight end Pat Freiermuth earlier this afternoon. I said, I'm about to record the podcast. Anything that you want me to say to the fans on the podcast? He just said, tell them that you love me. Not exactly what I was looking for from Pat. I was hoping we get some inspiration, some hype, some words of encouragement as we embark on the playoff journey here. But I do love you, Pat. So there we go. All right, you guys know the drill. DB, before we get out of here, tell the people they can find you.
At Steelers_DB on Twitter and YouTube. And all my written work can be found at SteelersNow.com.
SteelersNow.com. Sounds familiar. Alan, tell the people they can find you.
There, and Saunders_PGH. And subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode.
There we go. Leave a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, you'll find us there. Just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Do the same thing on TikTok, and then you'll find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders, Derrick Bell, and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.